Veronica, so excited to have you here today. You have been a longtime friend from our early days at McKinsey, and then on your incredible journey as a product manager and leader across multiple different startups, across an incredible ecosystem, and now most recently at Wealthsimple. So I can't wait to dive into all of these things. But first, I'd love to hear, where are you calling in from, and what's your main focus these days?
I am calling in from Toronto, Ontario, which is where I spend a lot of my time. The main thing that I'm focused on right now is, I would say, kind of excellence in my product teams. I'm spending a lot of time with the teams, the two teams that I oversee, just really trying to raise the bar, which is our theme at Wealthsimple this year, and really figure out how we can make our product quality and experience really just delightful and excellent. And it turns out that's a really interesting and broad challenge. So at least on the work side, that's what I'm focused on.
I love that. And I love that we're both Canadian. So there's that Canadian connection. I'm a big fan of Toronto, obviously. And for those who may not know about Wealthsimple, can you explain just what it's all about? What is the product?
Sure thing. So Wealthsimple is a Canadian fintech aggregator, I might say. And so I assume most folks will be calling in or listening from the US. And so it's basically a mashup of Robinhood, Wealthfront, Venmo, TurboTax, Coinbase, and a little bit of a classic bank. So, savings accounts and things like that, all rolled into one company focused on the Canadian market, because none of those companies actually exist up here or came up here. So Canada's a little bit behind the US in terms of our innovation in the financial space. So we're trying to change that.
I love that. I think that's super important. And having really solid companies come out and be built through Canadian ecosystem is a huge passion, I know, of both of ours. To dive in, I think one of your superpowers, or things I've really appreciated in my knowing you and being your friend and watching you on your journey, is how intentional you have been and how you've established your career and your learning journey. And so, one of the things I do is I look at the LinkedIn and I'm it's so impressive to think about the ways you thought about these steps, right? To start as a BA at McKinsey, but then moving into a product internship at Amazon, then going into product at Google, then to Mixpanel, which was a startup, and then ultimately Sidewalk Labs, and now Wealthsimple. And I think that is just an incredible pathway. I'd love to hear if you would want to share, how did you think about the way you wanted to set up your career journey and how you evaluated the criteria on which you decided when to switch and do, a new role to level up?
Yeah, this is my favorite topic to talk about. I love career chats. So I would say, first of all, where I ended up in my approach has been very much one of, I'm a product person and a builder, but other than that, I'm very much a generalist. I've flipped between B2B to B2C. I've worked on things I'm really mission aligned with and passionate about, and things that were I just took the job to build a skill, for example. But in general, I would say my philosophy is, very early in my career, it was really all about learning, and learning as much as I could, as quickly as I could, which meant honestly working pretty hard at McKinsey, and surrounding myself with people that I really respected and admired, and really trying to be the dumbest person in the room, especially with my first couple of roles. As I started to get a little bit more clarity on the jobs or the directions that I thought would be interesting. So I think it was around the time that I was at HBS that I sort of set my sights on product leadership as kind of the place that I wanted to end up. I actually had this idea in my mind that being the chief product officer of, a Series B, C growth stage startup would be my absolute dream job. I kind of had that in mind. Then what I did was I tried to I'm a very kind of structured, framework driven person. I actually broke down all of the skills that I would need to build, and I actually talked to some folks in that dream role that I just kind of sourced through my network, and tried to understand, if I wanted to get hired into that role or promoted into that role, what is the list of skills that I'm going to have and kind of be competent in. And that list of things, and I actually did this for the first time when I was at Google, and I wrote down that list of things that included some skills that I had, building products for a large scale of customers or consumers or clients, which obviously Google's very good at. But there was a bunch of things on that list that I didn't have skills in. So things around pricing and monetizing a business, hiring and coaching my own team. Things like retaining clients and growing market share in a competitive environment where you're not the market leader. These were all things that I really couldn't get access to at my level at Google. And so it was when I sort of realized that I had kind of maxed out the skills that I was looking to build at Google, was not going to get an opportunity to expand my skills into these new areas, that I started looking around, and that's where I found Mixpanel. And Mixpanel, very truthfully, just ranked the highest on my scorecard of skills I needed to build. I wasn't particularly passionate about the B2B enterprise software and product analytics space, but I was really passionate about building out my skills and just kind of making myself the most useful, kind of well-rounded product leader I could to set myself up for what was ultimately my end goal. I will say, in hindsight, not having mission anywhere on that list is something that I maybe wouldn't recommend. After having been through the Mixpanel experience, now I realize what an advantage it is to feel really passionately about the product I'm building, love what I'm building. And at Wealthsimple, I have that combination of mission alignment and a product I love, and a place where kind of my skills are growing. So just an asterisk that I might modify my framework a bit.
I love that so much. And one of the things, we talk about in general, like how you invest your time or your money or energy, is like, it's one thing to know when to get into something and another to know when to get out of it. And so like, how do you think about the time, and like, what advice would you give to somebody as they're thinking about their own career journey and progression? And there's all sorts of opinions, right? It's like, always do 2 years because you might get a better raise if you leave and join a new role than you would to get promoted from within, which is like horrible for retention, but is potentially good for your career. Other people might say, always be on the lookout. And remember a few people at McKinsey saying, I always have, every quarter I have a few conversations and I sort of just evaluate my options and, make a decision for myself of whether where I'm at is still, filling my goals. What are the things you think about or might give advice to somebody of how to think about when it's time to make that next transition into something new?
So I think that there's a couple things. First of all, I tell everyone, like I live by this, and I tell everyone, including people that report to me on my team, that you should never be at a company for more than 2 years without, or once you're at the 2-year mark, at an absolute maximum, you should start interviewing occasionally. If something hits your inbox that you're really excited about or interested in, or even if you're kind of find out about a company through networking, I'm really adamant that you should always be actively choosing to stay in the role that you're in, as opposed to staying in the role because you don't know what your other options are. And even if you do a search and you interview a couple places, you may realize that you actually love and are passionate about what you're doing, but you also might get, a benchmark for how much you're worth and what your comp, what market has done in your comp, and that you might actually use that to negotiate a higher salary. Or you might actually find out that there's something that you're really excited about that will allow you to kind of stretch and grow in new ways that you didn't even know about. And so that's why I think and then once you hit that 2-year mark, at least once a year, then you should just be doing that and just get into the habit of keeping your interviewing skills fresh, looking at what is out in the market, and really actively kind of choosing to stay where you are or make a change. So that's kind of a general framework about just kind of making sure that you are considering other things. And then I think there's another piece, which is just, I've always said, so when I was at Google, I kind of felt that my learning had slowed down a little bit. And I feel like you always do know where you kind of get a little bit comfortable. And I think it is a delicate balance between knowing when you're just kind of in flow and you know enough to be, really effective in your space versus when you're actually kind of not being challenged anymore. I think once you start kind of looking abroad, I think you kind of as you get to know yourself, and if you're working on like self-work and all these things, if you start getting more and more excited about things outside of work, I think you can kind of feel when the scale starts to tip. And so part of it is just self-reflection and spending time actually carving out space to think about your career. And sometimes, it's more of an art than a science.
I heard a new term, which is exactly capturing what you're sharing. It's called resting. So instead of burnout, which is like you're overworking, it's like you start to feel like you're resting and like you're not being used to your full capacity and you maybe need like an oil change. So
also, sometimes resting is okay. Like also say that I have friends now that are having kids, or, are building a house, and they just realize also there also comes a point where maybe work is not your highest priority, which is a kind of a foreign thing for me to say after, a decade of it being absolutely my highest priority. But sometimes also resting is okay. And so that's why I think it is, such a personal decision to decide when to make a change.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really good advice. I think another thing we hear often is just this fear of doing what you're saying, like, at a 2-year mark, starting to have some conversations and interviewing, like, what if somebody finds out that I'm interviewing? Is it immoral to be interviewing? Am I doing something wrong? How to think about, even bringing up if another offer comes through and be able to have the opportunity for a counter offer. I think especially like women can get like really intimidated and like not want to go through any potential conflict. And so we just go into like all this avoidance. Do you have any thoughts on that, or like strategies that you've seen work for people?
So companies are constantly evaluating us and constantly evaluating whether we are right for the role that they pay us for. Well, why should we not be constantly evaluating them? And if at any point in time I'm not the kind of best, most profitable choice for Wealthsimple in my role, they will fire me and they will not feel bad about it. They will not lose sleep about it. And so you don't owe your company any more loyalty than they owe you. And this is actually even within my company, I think it's okay to be very open about the fact that, it makes sense to hire or to interview. I'll tell my reports the same thing, that they should be going and interviewing. It's not a shameful thing. It's kind of the reality of a meritocracy and the capitalist society that we live in. And I think it's a good thing. And I think if you have employees who are actually encouraged and supported in looking elsewhere because you're so confident that you are going to give them the best learning opportunity and the really attractive compensation or upside based on kind of the stage the company's in. I think that the goal of the company should be to make it really hard for you to leave and for you to want to stay. And that if they really can't compete, they should be happy for you to leave. So I just really feel like that whole line of reasoning needs to be turned on its head. And actually, my mom is the one who told me that originally when I really struggled leaving Mixpanel. I wasn't intending to leave. Something fell in my lap after I'd been there less than a year. That was just too good to pass up. And I struggled so hard. And my mom was the one who gave me that advice. And it really helped.
I love that advice so much. I think that's so great that you shared it. It's so interesting to see how where we started this about you focusing on product excellence is also translating a lot into like professional excellence and your professional development. And there are a lot of similarities there. And I'm curious, whether it's within your product career journey or otherwise, what do you think is the most exciting thing that you've learned that you would want others to know?
The thing that I have been really excited about lately is the idea of kind of lifestyle-based investments. And I think especially as we get into our second phase of our career and you start to accumulate wealth and you're trying to find ways to deploy your wealth in ways that are both going to be like, you care about growth and returns. I'm still in a growth phase of my investing journey. But you also care about lifestyle. This is where I feel like everyone should be doing this. And I don't understand why more people are not doing this, which is my partner and I are currently building a place in Costa Rica. And I think that it's an example, and I'm sure there's others out there, but it's an example of a lifestyle choice we're making where we love the country, we love the lifestyle, we want to spend a good chunk of time there every year. But in addition, the economics of it are insane. Demand in the area has taken off. Supply hasn't caught up for a lot of reasons. And you can basically almost double your equity the day that you're done building because the market is, so you say you invest like 1.5 million USD in building, the day it's finished, you'll probably have about $1 million in equity. And also the rental market there is insane. So even if you're staying there 3 months a year, you're making 15 to 20% on your income. So you have both these kind of these investments that are unlocking a kind of new and different and more flexible lifestyle, which is something I'm really passionate about, but also is an incredible economic move or financial move. And I think that there's more and more of these opportunities. And I feel like our generation is more willing to take risks and think about kind of more flexible alternative lives. So you don't just have to put all your money in a mutual fund and wait 50 years, which is what our parents did. And especially when you have an income. And so a lot of your risk is and the ability to even if I were to get fired, I could probably find another job. A lot of the risk of kind of these big things is mitigated if you have kind of one or both partners being able to kind of support you for a period of time. And so I think about risk a lot differently than I used to. And I think about investing in ways that actually enable me to live a lifestyle that I want now, as opposed to just kind of putting all that money into something that might yield the same amount, but not yield the lifestyle benefits.
I'm personally very excited to benefit from this investment that you've made. Having seen the property, it's gorgeous. So I love that so much. We did an interview with Jackie Hyland, and she brought up a similar point where she had made investments in, mobile homes in the different national park areas that she just wanted to spend more time in. So she's like, I love Joshua Tree. I want to be around certain national parks. I'm going to buy these mobile homes, turn them into Airbnbs, own the land. And she's like, that was a lifestyle decision for her, but also, a revenue generating investment. And so I love, love, love what you're sharing. And I think it's such a good tip here, to share that there's other ways of thinking about your investment. You don't have to just invest for retirement. So that way, when you're 60, you can have the lifestyle that you want. You can also think about how your investments satisfy the life you want to live. I love that so much. Is there a person or a company that's really inspiring you in this space?
It's not directly in this space because it's not like lifestyle vacation real estate, but there's a startup that's in Canada, but I think they're about to come to the US called Addy. And they're basically working in the fractional real estate ownership, especially for kind of generations who maybe don't have the upfront capital to, buy and build something themselves. They're allowing kind of next generation to participate in the real estate market in a really tangible way. So they launch in cities where you can have a piece of ownership in the shopping mall that you go to, or maybe the apartment building that you live in. And they're doing some really interesting innovation on the kind of back-end automations of being able to scale these deals. And then they also are doing some really interesting creative stuff in terms of the user experience. They have this sort of metaverse style like Sims thing where when you invest in a company invest in a piece of real estate, that building shows up in your Addyverse. And if you refer a friend, you now have like a person walking around your Addyverse. And so it's this really interesting, kind of quirky in a way that really works, way of participating in the real estate market in a fractional way. And I think just what they're doing is really innovative and creative. And I would love if something like that also came to, vacation style properties. They're not there yet, but who knows?
Are you saying that all the work I did in Sims when I was like 12 years old could have actually been an investment? Oh, I can't wait to check it out. That's amazing. I love the gamification of it. And we'll definitely link that in the notes here for everyone to check out. So while we just close, thank you so much for being here, but how can we keep in touch with you personally on your own career journey, the investments that you're making with this new property? You guys are gonna have to start an Instagram for this rental in the future, but how can we keep in touch with you? And then also Wealthsimple.
So for me personally, LinkedIn is still how I kind of, from a networking perspective, generally connect with folks. And I meet a lot of people there. And then sometimes on Instagram, for kind of, I'm pretty open in connecting on Instagram if you send a little note as well. And then in terms of Wealthsimple, if you're in Canada, head to our website, download our app. I am willing to talk for hours and hours and hours about how awesome the offering is that we're building. If you're not in Canada, we actually have a really awesome weekly newsletter called TLDR. We call it our weekly non-boring newsletter about money, markets, and crypto. And so it's a really kind of fun take on what's happening in the global markets from a money perspective. So if you're not in Canada, you can check that out.
Thank you so much, Veronica. I'm so grateful to know you. Thank you for sharing everything today, and we'll definitely be following along.
Sounds great. Thanks, Lana. Have a good one.
Thanks.